So, today I'll be continuing with my schedule discussion and point spread prediction videos. Today I'll be doing Virginia Tech. So, Virginia Tech has some hype going into this season, and I actually kind of agree with it. They're not getting hype because of their record from last season, because they were only 7-6, but they're getting hype because of how they finished the season, because of they started the season 2-4 with some really bad losses, and then won 5 of their last 7 games and had some blowout wins, and they have the most returning production of all teams this season in college football. Nearly every player that did anything for them last season is back, and they have all 11 starters on offense back. And you can think whatever you want to about those players, and I know they're not the best players, but experience really helps a team. Because Michigan didn't win the national championship last year because they had the best players. They won it because they had such an experienced team. Mm, And Michigan last year had the most returning production, I think, of all teams. Now, I'm not saying Virginia Tech is winning the national championship. They're for sure not. They're nowhere near that good still. Uh, but I do think that this schedule is going to give them a good chance to make it to the ACC championship. And of course, now how the playoff works, a win there would put them in the college football playoff. Now, I do still think Virginia Tech is a long ways from being able to be competitive in a college football playoff, though. But this schedule uh, doesn't have Florida State or NC State or Louisville, who are supposed to be three of the ACC's best teams. And they do have to play Clemson, but they don't have to play at Clemson, which is a big help. And then their non-conference schedule isn't bad. They don't play any good teams. So they start the season on the road at Vanderbilt, and I think they'll beat up on Vanderbilt because of how bad Vanderbilt is. And then they play Marshall, and then on the road at Old Dominion. So these are the type of games that Virginia Tech has been struggling with. They actually did lose to Marshall last year, and Old Dominion isn't horrible. They're FBS. But I think Virginia Tech should be to the point now this year to where they can win both of those games fairly easily. Uh, and then they play Rutgers. And I saw they lost to Rutgers last year uh, pretty bad. But Rutgers is not very good. I think uh, Virginia Tech should be able to beat them this time. Uh, and then they start their conference schedule on the road at Miami on a Friday, which will probably be a Friday night game. And I've told you how hard it is to win on the road on weekday games. But Miami doesn't have a real home field. They rent the Miami Dolphins stadium for their home games in the fall. Uh, but still, this is going to be a really tough game. And, Miami is a very talented team, more than Virginia Tech is. And then they play on the road at Stanford. So if you're having to play two road games in a row, it's really nice for the second one to be Stanford. Was no home field advantage for Stanford, and a horrible team, one of the worst in the Power Four last year, and will probably be that way again. they're like Vanderbilt. And the only tough thing though about that is having to travel all the way across the country. Uh, and then they take a week off before playing Boston College on a Thursday. That'll probably be a night game. And Boston College, I don't really think it's going to do much this year. Virginia Tech should be better. Uh, and then they play at Georgia Tech at home. That one will be a challenge, I think, because Georgia Tech is improving, but very winnable for Virginia Tech, and it will help probably having a couple extra days to prepare for them. And then on the road at Syracuse, Syracuse maybe a little better this year with McCord coming in from Ohio State at quarterback. But I still really think that Virginia Tech is probably a little better. Uh, and then Clemson. Uh, so I wouldn't give Virginia Tech much of a chance to beat Clemson if it was at Clemson, but at Virginia Tech, I think they have a really good chance to pull an upset here. Because Clemson is more talented than Virginia Tech, but they are not what they used to be. Uh, Especially on the offensive side of the ball. Uh, they're much more beatable now. And I think if Virginia Tech does beat Clemson, there's a really good chance they'll go to the ACC championship. But I think if they lose this one, they probably won't. And then they take a week off before playing on the road at Duke. Duke, I don't think is going to be as good. Uh, Losing all those players and that coach because they've had two decent years these past 2 years, but those were the 2 years that he was there. So I expect them to go back to being awful again. Virginia Tech, I think, uh, should take care of them probably. And then they have their in-state rival Virginia, who is uh, horrible. I think Virginia Tech should beat up on them this year. Uh, and now I'll move on to the point spread prediction. Uh, and if you want to see more about how I do these, you can watch my first one, the Ohio State video. Uh, mm, but games in the uh, blue are games where I think Virginia Tech will be favored to win by double digits, which is 10 to 19 points. And uh, there's one of those at Old Dominion. And then games in the uh, purple are games where I think they'll be favored to win by about a touchdown, so 6 to 9 points. And there's four of those: Vanderbilt, Marshall, Stanford, and Virginia. And games in the pink are games where I think they'll be favored to win by about a field goal, 1 to 5 points. And there's five of those: Rutgers, Boston College, Georgia Tech, Syracuse, and Duke. Uh, and games in the gray are games where I think Virginia Tech will be about a field goal underdog. So that's 1 to 5 points, and there's one of those, Miami. And then uh, games in the yellow are games where I think they'll be about a touchdown underdog, 6 to 9 points, and there's one of those, Clemson. Uh, so Old Dominion. Mm, I think Virginia Tech should be favored in that one by at least a couple of touchdowns, uh, probably around 14 to 16 points. Uh, that's the one that I think could possibly end up being in the green, which means they would be a blowout favorite by uh, 20 or more points. Uh, and Vanderbilt, I think Virginia Tech will probably be an 8 or 9 point favorite in that game. Uh, and then they'll probably be favored uh, by about 7 over Marshall. Um, and they'll probably be about a 8 or 9 point favorite over Stanford. Uh, mm, and probably Virginia Tech will be favored by around 7 uh, against Virginia. Mm, and mm, mm, Rutgers, think the spread in that one will probably be around 3. That could be a toss up, though, if it was a road game. And then Boston College, mm, uh, Virginia Tech will probably be favored by uh, around 5 in that game. And then they'll probably be favored by around 3 against Georgia Tech. Mm, And Syracuse, uh, Virginia Tech will probably be the favorite by around 3. Mm, And uh, Duke, uh, I think Virginia Tech will be favored by 4 or 5 points in that one. Uh, and Miami, I think will be about a 3 point favorite over Virginia Tech. But that would be a toss up, I'm pretty sure, if it was at Virginia Tech. Maybe even Virginia Tech might be favored then. Because Virginia Tech has a decent home field advantage. It's not a real easy place to play. Mm, And Clemson, I think they'll be about a 6 point favorite over Virginia Tech. But wouldn't be shocking when it comes time for that game to be played if that was actually uh, in the gray. Mm, And uh, so they'll be the favorite probably in 10 games this year. Uh, so mm, they should have a pretty good season, I would think, with all of those players from last year coming back. Uh, mm, and that will be it with this video. And please subscribe to the channel, and I'll be back soon.